You've been chosen to serve at the most exclusive event in Manhattan. Margot Sullivan froze with the tray balanced on her arm, staring at the Riverside Cafe manager as if she'd just announced that Elvis was alive and ordering a double cappuccino. Those 7 words had just turned her world upside down. Me? Are you sure it's not Keeley? She murmured, still processing. Sandra crossed her arms, a rare smile lighting up her usually stern face. The event agency asked for you specifically. Someone saw you working here and was impressed. The payment is $5,000 for one night. $5,000. Enough to finally pay for Grandma Rose's dental treatment. Enough to not have to choose between food and electricity bills next month. 2 days earlier. Are you absolutely certain you want to do this? Margot looked at her best friend Delphine while holding the golden invitation with embossed letters. The thing weighed like real gold in her trembling hands. Private birthday party, Vivian Ashford, the Plaza Hotel, attire, black tie. It's $5,000, Del. $5,000. I'd clean subway station bathrooms for that kind of money. Margot tried to sound confident, but her voice betrayed her insecurity. Delphine, always the skeptic, narrowed her emerald green eyes. Something's wrong. Nobody pays that absurd amount for an unknown waitress to serve champagne. Have you stopped to think this might be a trap? A test? One of those cruel pranks bored rich people play? Margot bit her lip. Of course she'd thought about it. She'd spent the last 48 hours oscillating between excitement and pure terror. But when she called her grandmother that morning and heard the veiled pain in the voice of the woman who raised her, when Rose tried to hide that she was eating toast with ketchup to save money, I have to try, she finally whispered. I can't let Grandma suffer when there's a chance, even a small one, to help her. Present. Night of the event. Now, standing in the staff locker room at the Plaza Hotel, Margot observed her reflection in the mirror. The impeccable black and white uniform transformed her ordinary appearance into something almost elegant. She pulled her rebellious brown hair into a tight bun, applied a touch of gloss to her lips, and took a deep breath. You've got this. It's just a few hours. Smile, serve drinks, be invisible, and leave $5,000 richer. The ballroom was breathtaking. Swarovski crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen diamond rain. White flowers, orchids, roses, lilies, covered every available surface, filling the air with a perfume so intense that Margot felt dizzy. Women in dresses that cost more than her year's rent glided across the marble floor, while men in tuxedos conversed in small groups, holding champagne glasses that were probably worth more than her old car. Listen up, everyone, hissed Gregory, the event's supervisor, gathering the waitstaff. His tone was urgent. The birthday girl is Vivian Ashford. Yes, that Vivian Ashford, heiress, philanthropist, Manhattan's social ice queen. She doesn't tolerate mistakes. You spill a drop, trip on a rug, breathe too loudly. You're fired and blacklisted. Understood? Margot swallowed hard and nodded along with the others. And most importantly, Gregory continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Her fiancé, Dashiell Blackwood, will be present. Yes, the real estate billionaire. Keep your distance. Don't make unnecessary eye contact, and for God's sake, don't spill anything on him. Dashiell Blackwood. Margot knew the name. Who didn't? He was always on the covers of business magazines, Forbes, Wall Street Journal. Young, rich, powerful. The kind of man who existed in a parallel universe to hers. As she picked up her tray of champagnes, Margot had no idea that in less than 2 hours, she would be accused of theft, confront the most dangerous man in the room, and change the course of her life forever. Destiny, she would discover, didn't ask permission before turning everything upside down. The collision happened at exactly 9:47 p.m. Margot was expertly weaving through the crowd, her tray balanced with 6 crystal flutes of Dom Pérignon, when a tall figure stepped backward directly into her path. She pivoted sharply to avoid impact, but her heel caught on the edge of an ornate rug. Time slowed to a crawl as she felt herself falling, the champagne glasses beginning their inevitable descent toward the pristine marble floor. Then, strong hands caught her waist. "Steady there." The voice was deep, warm, with a hint of amusement. Margot looked up and found herself staring into the most striking pair of gray eyes she'd ever seen. The man was tall, at least 6'3", with dark hair that fell just slightly over his forehead in a way that seemed both deliberate and careless. His tuxedo fit him like it had been designed specifically for his athletic frame, which, she realized with dawning horror, it probably had been. "Mr. Blackwood," she breathed, her heart hammering. "I'm so sorry, You didn't spill a drop," he interrupted, his lips curving into a smile that transformed his serious face into something dangerously charming. "That's impressive. Most people would have panicked and made it worse." He was still holding her. His hands were warm through the thin fabric of her uniform, and Margot became acutely aware that every eye in the vicinity had turned toward them. She stepped back quickly, smoothing her clothes. I need to," she stammered, feeling heat creep up her neck. "Breathe," Dashiell suggested, that infuriating smile still in place. "Yes, I'd recommend that." Before Margot could respond, a crystalline voice cut through the moment like a blade through silk. "Dashiell, darling, there you are." Vivian Ashford materialized beside them, and Margot understood immediately why they called her the Ice Queen. She was stunning in the way that magazine covers were stunning. Perfect, polished, and somehow not quite real. Her platinum blonde hair was swept into an intricate updo. Her ice blue gown probably cost more than Margot's entire year's salary, and her smile didn't reach her Arctic blue eyes. "I've been looking everywhere for you," Vivian continued, linking her arm possessively through Dashiell's. Her gaze swept over Margot with the attention one might give to a slightly interesting insect. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem," Dashiell said smoothly. "I nearly caused an accident. This waitress has remarkable reflexes." "How fortunate." Vivian's smile sharpened. She turned to Margot fully now, and something flickered in those cold eyes. Something calculating. "You're the new girl, aren't you? The one they brought in specially?" "Yes, ma'am," Margot replied, keeping her voice steady despite the warning bells clanging in her mind. "Interesting." Vivian's perfectly manicured nail tapped against her champagne glass. "Well, do be careful. The Ashfords have very high standards. We'd hate for anything to go wrong." The emphasis on the last word sent a chill down Margot's spine. This wasn't a casual warning. It was a threat wrapped in silk and diamonds. "Of course. If you'll excuse me," Margot managed, desperate to escape the suffocating tension. As she turned to leave, Dashiell spoke again. "Wait, I didn't catch your name." Margot froze. Every instinct screamed at her to keep walking, to disappear into the crowd, and finish the night without further incident. But something in his voice, genuine curiosity perhaps, or interest, made her turn back. "Margot," she said quietly. "Margot Sullivan." "Margot," he repeated, as if testing how it felt. "Thank you for not destroying my shoes with expensive champagne." Despite everything, she felt a smile tug at her lips. "You're welcome, Mr. Blackwood." "Dash," he corrected. "Mr. Blackwood is my father, and he's significantly less charming." "Dashiell," Vivian's voice had acquired a razor's edge. "We have guests waiting." As Vivian steered him away, Dashiell glanced back over his shoulder, holding Margot's gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then they disappeared into the crowd, leaving Margot standing alone with her heart racing and her survival instincts screaming that she'd just made a terrible mistake. She had no way of knowing how right those instincts were. An hour later, Margot was refilling champagne glasses near the dessert table when she overheard two women in couture gowns gossiping behind a tower of macarons. "Did you see the way he looked at that waitress?" one hissed. "Vivian noticed too," the other replied. "I wouldn't want to be that girl. You know what happened to the last person who crossed Vivian Ashford." "What happened?" "Nobody knows exactly." but she disappeared from Manhattan society completely. Rumor has it Vivian made one phone call and destroyed her entire life. Margot's blood ran cold. She carefully set down the champagne bottle and moved away, her hands trembling slightly. This was supposed to be simple: serve drinks, collect money, go home. How had it gotten so complicated so quickly? She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice Vivian watching her from across the room. Those ice-blue eyes narrowed with calculation and something far more dangerous: jealousy mixed with determination. The birthday queen was already planning her next move. The diamond necklace disappeared at 11:23 p.m. Margot was clearing champagne glasses from a side table near the grand piano when she heard the scream. Not a scream of fear, but one of theatrical distress, the kind that demanded immediate attention from everyone in the room. Vivian stood in the center of the ballroom, one hand clutched to her throat, her face a perfect mask of shock and dismay. The music stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. Every head turned toward the birthday girl. "My necklace!" she gasped, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "The Ashford diamond tears! It's gone!" Margot's stomach dropped. She knew what was coming before Vivian's glacial eyes found her across the crowded room. "The clasp was loose earlier," Vivian continued, her voice trembling with just the right amount of vulnerability. "I took it off and placed it on the table near the desserts. I was only gone for a moment, but now—" Her gaze locked onto Margot with laser precision. You were just there, weren't you?" Every eye in the ballroom swiveled to Margot. The weight of 200 elite judgments pressed down on her shoulders like physical force. Her mouth went dry. "I was clearing glasses," Margot said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I didn't see any necklace." How convenient. Vivian's mother, Patricia Ashford, materialized beside her daughter like a designer-clad guardian angel. Her expression could have frozen the sun. This girl was specifically requested for tonight. Rather suspicious timing, wouldn't you say? Gregory, the event supervisor, pushed through the crowd, his face pale with panic. "Miss Sullivan, perhaps you should come with me. We can sort this out quietly." "I didn't take anything," Margot insisted, her voice rising slightly. "I didn't even see a necklace." "Then you won't mind being searched," Patricia said coolly. "The Ashford diamond tears is worth $2.3 million. I'm sure you understand our concern." Margot's world tilted. $2.3 million. She could feel the story writing itself in real time. Poor waitress steals from wealthy family. It didn't matter that she was innocent. In a room full of Manhattan's elite, guilt or innocence was determined by net worth and social standing. "Actually," a deep voice cut through the murmur of speculation, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Dashiell Blackwood stepped forward, and the crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. His expression was unreadable, but there was steel in his gray eyes. He positioned himself slightly in front of Margot, not quite protectively, but close enough to make a statement. Vivian's perfectly composed face flickered with surprise before smoothing back into distress. "Dash, darling, I know this is unpleasant, but when did you last see the necklace?" Dash asked, his tone businesslike. "I told you. I placed it on the dessert table 15 minutes ago." "That's interesting," Dash continued, pulling out his phone. "Because I have a time-stamped photo from 20 minutes ago where you're clearly wearing it while talking to the mayor's wife." He turned the screen to show the image. Vivian, radiant and fully adorned, the diamond necklace glittering at her throat. The silence that followed was deafening. Vivian's eyes widened, genuine surprise cracking through her practiced facade. I must have been confused about the timing. The stress of the evening. "So the necklace disappeared in the last 5 minutes," Dash said, his voice dangerously soft. "During which time, Margot was with me." That was a lie. A bold, beautiful lie. Margot's heart hammered as she realized what he was doing. "With you?" Patricia's eyebrows rose skeptically. "She was refilling my drink near the terrace," Dash continued smoothly. We were discussing the catering arrangements for the foundation gala next month. Weren't we, Margot? Margot's mind raced. She could contradict him, tell the truth, and face whatever consequences Vivienne had planned. Or she could play along and wonder why a billionaire was lying for a waitress he'd just met. Yes, she heard herself say. The gala arrangements. Vivienne's expression transformed. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. How thoughtful of you to take such interest in the staff, darling. Though I must say, discussing business at my birthday party seems rather poor form. You're right, Dash acknowledged, but his eyes never left Vivienne's face. Perhaps we should have the security team review the footage from the dessert area. The plaza has cameras everywhere. That won't be necessary, Vivienne said quickly, too quickly. I'm sure the necklace will turn up, probably just misplaced in all the excitement. She forced a bright smile. Let's not let this little confusion ruin the evening. Everyone, please continue enjoying yourselves. The crowd slowly resumed their conversations, but the damage was done. Margot could feel their stares, hear their whispers. She'd been accused and barely exonerated, and in this world suspicion lingered longer than proof of innocence. Miss Sullivan, Gregory hissed, appearing at her elbow. Perhaps it's best if you leave early. I'll ensure you still receive full payment. Translation: get out before you cause more trouble. Margot nodded numbly, desperate to escape. She turned toward the service exit, but a hand caught her wrist gently. Not yet, Dash said quietly. His voice meant only for her. If you leave now, everyone will assume guilt. Stay until the end of your shift. Prove you have nothing to hide. Why are you helping me? Margot whispered, confused and overwhelmed. Something flickered in his gray eyes. Curiosity, interest, perhaps something deeper. Because you didn't take that necklace, and because Vivienne's a terrible liar when she's caught off guard. He paused. Also, you're the first interesting thing to happen at one of these parties in years. Before Margot could respond, Vivienne appeared beside them, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Dashiell, we need to talk. Privately. She glanced at Margot with thinly veiled contempt. Unless you're too busy with the help. Dash's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I'll find you in a moment, Viv. But as he walked away, he glanced back at Margot one more time, and in that look she saw both a warning and a promise. The night was far from over, and Vivienne Ashford was just getting started. Margot made it to midnight before everything fell apart again. She was loading dirty glasses onto a service cart in a secluded hallway when she heard footsteps behind her. Her entire body tensed, half expecting Vivienne with another accusation. But the voice that spoke was the one that had been haunting her thoughts all evening. You handled that remarkably well. Margot turned to find Dashiell leaning against the doorframe, his bow tie loosened, looking less like a billionaire and more like a dangerously attractive man who'd just escaped a suffocating party. I didn't have much choice, she replied, trying to steady her racing pulse. Though I'm still not sure why you lied for me. I didn't lie. He stepped closer. You were with me, just not in the way I implied. Semantics won't hold up if Vivienne pushes this. Vivienne won't push it. Dash's expression darkened. Because there never was a missing necklace. She's wearing it under her dress on a different chain. I saw the clasp when she leaned forward during dinner. Margot stared at him. She set me up. But why? You really don't know? Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or intrigue. You're beautiful, intelligent, and you didn't fawn over me when we met. In Vivienne's world, that makes you a threat. The word beautiful hung in the air between them. Margot's cheeks flushed. I'm a waitress. I'm nobody's threat. You're wrong about that. Dash moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that made her head spin. And deep down, I think you know it. Mr. Blackwood, Dash, he corrected softly. And I think we're past formalities, don't you? You've been falsely accused at my fiancé's party, and I've committed perjury on your behalf. That creates a certain intimacy. Your fiancé, Margot emphasized, taking a step back even as every nerve in her body urged her forward. That's exactly why I should stay away from you. Probably, he agreed, but he didn't move. Though should and want are rarely the same thing. The air between them crackled with tension. Margot knew she should leave, should put distance between herself and this impossibly complicated man. But something rooted her in place: curiosity, attraction, or maybe just the reckless desire to feel something real in a night full of artificial elegance. Why are you marrying her? The question escaped before Margot could stop it. Dash's expression shuttered. That's complicated. Most things worth doing are. He laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face. You're full of surprises, Margot Sullivan. Where did you come from? Brooklyn. A tiny apartment above a laundromat. Not exactly your usual crowd. No, he said quietly. Not at all. He paused, studying her face as if memorizing it. This marriage? It's been arranged since Vivienne and I were children. Our families, their businesses, generations of expectations. I've spent my entire life doing what was expected, building what was planned, becoming who I was supposed to be. That sounds exhausting. It is. The admission seemed to surprise him. Until tonight, I'd accepted it. Vivienne and I understand each other. It's a partnership, not a love match. We both knew what we were signing up for. Until tonight, Margot echoed. Dash met her eyes, and the intensity in his gaze stole her breath. Until I met someone who looked at me like I was just a man who nearly made her spill champagne. Not a bank account, not a merger opportunity, not a status symbol. Just a man. Dash. Margot's protest died on her lips as he reached out, his fingers barely brushing her cheek. I know this is insane, he whispered. I know I have no right to say any of this. But for the first time in 32 years, I want something that wasn't chosen for me. The moment shattered like crystal. How touching. Vivienne stood at the end of the hallway, her phone raised, camera clearly pointed at them. Her smile was venomous. I knew something was going on. The way you looked at her, the convenient alibi. I just needed proof. Margot's blood turned to ice. Nothing happened. That photo suggests otherwise, Vivienne purred. How will it look when it surfaces online? Billionaire's fiancé caught an intimate moment with Waitress hours before their engagement party. The tabloids will feast on this for weeks. Delete that, Dash commanded, his voice deadly quiet. Or what? Vivienne challenged. You'll leave me? Please. You know what happens if you break our engagement. The Ashford-Blackwood merger collapses. Your father's legacy project dies. 200 employees lose their jobs. She turned her poisonous smile to Margot. All because you couldn't resist playing Cinderella for one night. Margot felt sick. This wasn't just about her anymore. People's livelihoods hung in the balance. I'll leave, she said quickly. Right now. You'll never see me again. Oh, it's far too late for that. Vivienne stepped closer, her eyes glittering with malice. But I'll make you a deal. Tomorrow morning you'll go to the police and confess to attempting to steal my necklace. You'll say you were caught, fired, and that's the end of it. A simple theft attempt by a desperate girl. Barely newsworthy. That's insane, Dash growled. She didn't. The alternative, Vivienne cut him off, is I release this photo, destroy your reputation, collapse the merger, and ensure Miss Sullivan never works in this city again. I have that power, Dashel. You know I do. The ultimatum hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Margot looked at Dash's tortured expression, saw the weight of impossible choices crushing down on him, and made her decision. I'll do it, she said quietly. I'll confess. Margot, no. Dash reached for her, but she stepped back. It's okay. She forced a smile that felt like breaking. This was never my world anyway. She walked away before her resolve could crumble, before she could see the look in Dash's eyes, before Vivienne could twist the knife any deeper. Behind her, she heard Vivienne's satisfied laugh and Dash's anguished curse, but she kept walking, out of the plaza, into the cold November night, carrying the weight of a $5,000 paycheck and a shattered heart she had no right to have. She'd survive this. She always did. She just hadn't expected it to hurt quite so much. Margot didn't go to the police. She sat in her cramped Brooklyn apartment at 3 a.m., staring at her phone, the confession Vivienne had dictated still typed in her notes app. $5,000 sat in her bank account, blood money that felt heavier than gold. "You can't do this," Delphine said for the 10th time, pacing the small living room. "A false confession? Margot, you'll have a criminal record. Do you understand what that means?" "It means Grandma Rose gets her treatment," Margot replied hollowly. "It means 200 people keep their jobs. It means you're sacrificing yourself for a man you just met and a vindictive witch who deserves to choke on her diamonds." Margot's phone buzzed. "Unknown number. Don't do it, please." Her heart clenched. She deleted the message. "He texted you?" Delphine peered over her shoulder. "Margot, if he cares, he'll fight for you." "He can't. You didn't see the stakes." Margot stood abruptly, grabbing her jacket. "I need air." She walked for hours through the sleeping city, wrestling with impossible choices. Dawn was breaking over the East River when her phone rang, a number she recognized from the event agency. "Miss Sullivan, this is Gregory from Plaza Events. We need to speak urgently. Can you come to the office this morning?" Her stomach dropped. "Is this about—" "Just come. 8 a.m. Don't be late." The event agency office was sterile and impersonal. Gregory sat behind a desk, but he wasn't alone. A woman in an expensive suit stood by the window, her back to Margot. "Miss Sullivan," the woman said without turning. "Do you know who I am?" "No, ma'am." The woman turned, and Margot recognized her immediately from dozens of magazine covers. Eleanor Blackwood, Dashiell's mother, one of the most powerful women in New York real estate. "My son told me what happened last night," Eleanor said, her sharp green eyes assessing Margot like a complex equation. "Every detail. Vivienne's setup, the false accusations, the extortion." Margot's mouth went dry. "Mrs. Blackwood, He also told me you agreed to falsely confess to protect him and his father's business." Eleanor's expression softened slightly. "That was either incredibly noble or spectacularly stupid. I haven't decided which." "Probably both," Margot admitted. Eleanor laughed, a genuine surprised sound. "I like you. That's unfortunate, because liking you makes what I'm about to do much harder." Here it comes, Margot thought. The payoff, the threat, the order to disappear. "I'm offering you $2 million, Eleanor said calmly. "Take it and leave New York. Start over somewhere else. California, Europe, wherever you'd like. You'll never have to work as a waitress again, never have to worry about your grandmother's medical bills." Margot stared, certain she'd misheard. "You're paying me to leave?" "I'm paying you to save my son from himself." Eleanor's voice hardened. "Dashiell thinks he's in love with you. One night, one conversation, and 32 years of careful planning is unraveling because of a pretty face and genuine smile." "He doesn't love me," Margot protested weakly. "He doesn't even know me." "No, he doesn't. But he's infatuated enough to be dangerous. The Ashford merger isn't just about business. It's about legacy, power, stability. My husband built this empire for Dashiell. If it collapses because of a romantic impulse—" Eleanor's jaw tightened. "Take the money, Miss Sullivan. Be the smart girl I think you are." $2 million. More money than Margot had ever imagined. Security for her grandmother, for herself, for her entire future. All she had to do was walk away from a man she'd known for 4 hours. A man who'd lied for her, protected her, looked at her like she was worth more than all the diamonds in Manhattan. "No," Margot heard herself say. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. Excuse me. No. Margot's voice grew stronger. I'm not taking your money, and I'm not making a false confession either. You're making a mistake. Probably, Margot agreed, but it's my mistake to make. Your son deserves to make his own choices too. Maybe he'll choose the merger and the legacy and everything you've planned, but it should be his decision, not mine and not yours. Eleanor studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. You know what? I really do like you. Which is why I'm going to tell you something I shouldn't. She pulled out her phone and showed Margot a series of photographs. Vivienne at various events, always with different men when Dash wasn't present. Intimate dinners, stolen kisses, hotel entrances. Vivienne's been having affairs for years, Eleanor said coolly. The Ashfords know. We know. It's an open secret in our circle. The marriage was never about love. It was about preserving appearances and combining assets. Why are you showing me this? Because Dashiell doesn't know, Eleanor said quietly. We kept it from him to ensure he'd go through with the engagement. But last night, after he came home ranting about injustice and forced choices, she paused. I realized I'd raised my son to be strong and decisive, then spent his entire adult life making his decisions for him. Margot's head spun. What are you saying? I'm saying that if certain photographs were to reach my son's email this morning, the engagement would end immediately. The merger would be damaged but not destroyed. We'd find another way. Eleanor's eyes glinted. And I'm saying that you have more courage in your little finger than Vivienne Ashford has in her entire designer wardrobe. Mrs. Blackwood. Go home, Miss Sullivan. Check your email. You've received a rather generous consulting fee for your discretion regarding last night's events. Not $2 million, let's call it $50,000. Enough for your grandmother and a few months' breathing room. I can't accept. You can, and you will. Consider it payment for teaching my son what integrity looks like. Eleanor moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Miss Sullivan, Dashiell will be at the Riverside Cafe tomorrow at 2 p.m. Something about their excellent coffee and remarkable waitresses. Then she was gone, leaving Margot standing in the office, her entire world reshaping itself once again. Gregory cleared his throat. That was unexpected. You can go, Miss Sullivan. And congratulations. I think you just impressed one of the most formidable women in New York. Margot walked out into the morning sunshine, pulled out her phone, and saw 17 missed calls from an unknown number. She pressed play on the voicemail. Margot, it's Dash. Don't go to the police. I'm ending the engagement. I don't care about the merger, the legacy, or what anyone thinks. I just care about... A long pause. I care about doing something real for once in my life. Even if you never want to see me again, I need you to know that meeting you changed everything. You showed me what I've been missing. Thank you for that. Margot stood on the sidewalk, tears streaming down her face, and for the first time in years, she believed that maybe, just maybe, fairy tales could come true, even for Brooklyn waitresses. Vivienne Ashford's engagement ended at exactly 10:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Margot heard about it from Delphine, who heard it from her cousin who worked at the New York Times gossip column, who heard it from someone at Blackwood Industries. By noon, it was trending on social media. By 1 p.m., theories ranged from secret affairs to financial scandal to alien abduction. The truth, as Margot knew, was simultaneously simpler and more complicated. She arrived at the Riverside Cafe at 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes early, her nerves wound tight. She'd changed outfits 4 times before Delphine physically removed the closet door from her hands and forced her into jeans and a soft blue sweater. You're meeting him as yourself, Delphine had insisted. Not as some fantasy version he imagined. If he can't handle real Margot, he doesn't deserve any Margot. Now, watching the door from behind the counter, Margot wondered if she'd made a catastrophic mistake. What did she even know about Dashiell Blackwood? 4 hours of conversation, 1 near kiss, and a voicemail didn't constitute a relationship. The bell above the door chimed. Her heart stopped. Dash looked different in daylight, wearing jeans and a navy Henley instead of a tuxedo. His hair was slightly messy, his face unshaven, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked exhausted, real, and somehow more attractive than he had at the party. Their eyes met across the cafe. He smiled, tentative, uncertain, nothing like the confident billionaire from Saturday night. "Hi," he said, approaching the counter. "Hi," she echoed, acutely aware that every customer in the cafe was now watching them with undisguised interest. "Can we—" He gestured toward a corner booth. "Talk somewhere slightly less public?" Margot glanced at Sandra, who was staring at Dash with open recognition. The manager nodded slowly, and Margot untied her apron with shaking hands. They sat across from each other in the worn vinyl booth, and for a moment, neither spoke. "I saw the news," Margot said finally. "Are you okay?" Dash laughed, but it sounded hollow. "I broke off a decade-long engagement this morning via email and a messenger-delivered ring box. My father isn't speaking to me. The Ashfords are threatening legal action, and half of Manhattan thinks I've lost my mind." He met her eyes. "And somehow, I feel freer than I have in years." "Dash, let me finish, please." He leaned forward, his intensity making her breath catch. "My mother showed me photographs this morning, evidence that Vivian had been unfaithful for most of our relationship. She thought it would make my decision easier, cleaner somehow." "Did it?" "No. Because I'd already decided the moment I walked away from you Saturday night." His voice dropped. "I spent the rest of that party watching you work, watching you smile at strangers, handle difficult guests with grace, navigate a world that was designed to make you feel small. And I realized that in 4 hours, you showed me more genuine humanity than I'd experienced in 32 years of carefully curated social interactions." Margot's throat tightened. "You don't really know me." "I could be terrible." "Are you?" he challenged gently. "I snore. I'm chronically late. I once ate an entire pizza meant for 4 people because I was stressed about bills. I have student loans I'll probably never finish paying, and my idea of a fancy night out is the Thai place with the good spring rolls." "The one on 7th Avenue?" Dash asked. "With the green awning?" "How did you—" "I looked it up after you mentioned Brooklyn. I was going to accidentally run into you there." He smiled sheepishly. Turns out billionaires can be stalkers too. Despite everything, Margot laughed. "That's deeply weird." "I know. I'm working on being better at normal human behavior." He reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers, but not quite touching. "Margot, I'm not asking you to fix my life or be my savior, or whatever romantic nonsense this looks like from the outside. I'm just asking for a chance to get to know you. Real dates, real conversations, real complications and all. What about the merger? Your father's legacy? We'll find another way. My father built his empire through innovation, not arranged marriages. If he can't see that, maybe it's time I built something of my own." Dash's jaw set with determination. "I refuse to spend the next 40 years wondering what if." Margot looked at his hand, still hovering near hers, and thought about all the reasons this was insane. The social gulf between them. The media attention. Vivian's inevitable revenge. The fact that fairy tales weren't supposed to happen to girls from Brooklyn. Then she thought about his voicemail, his mother's unexpected alliance, and the way he looked at her like she was worth burning down an empire for. She took his hand. "Okay," she said softly. "One date. Real complications and all." The smile that broke across Dash's face was worth every risk, every fear, every impossible obstacle that lay ahead. They didn't notice Vivian's private investigator sitting 3 tables away, photographing everything. They didn't see the email being drafted to every major gossip outlet in New York. Breaking. Blackwood's new girlfriend. Gold digger or true love. They didn't hear Vivian on the phone with her lawyer, her voice cold with calculated fury. "I want everything on Margot Sullivan. Every debt, every mistake, every secret." If Dashiell wants to throw away his legacy for a waitress, I'll make sure the whole world sees exactly who she really is. In that moment, sitting in a worn booth in a Brooklyn cafe, Margot and Dash existed in a bubble of possibility, unaware that the real battle was just beginning. But even if they'd known, even if they could see the storm clouds gathering on the horizon, neither would have let go. Some things they were both learning were worth fighting for. Later that evening, Margot's phone exploded with notifications. Her social media accounts were flooded with messages, some supportive, many vicious. Strangers analyzed her appearance, her background, her worthiness. Gold digger, social climber, homewrecker upgrade from Brooklyn Delphine found her crying on the bathroom floor at 11 p.m. "Don't read them," her friend said firmly, taking the phone away. "These people don't know you. They don't get a vote." "Maybe they're right," Margot whispered. "Maybe I'm ruining his life." "Or maybe," Delphine countered, "you're saving it. Either way, you don't get to decide alone. If Dash wants to be with you, that's his choice too." Margot's phone buzzed with a text from Dash. "I see the posts. Ignore them. You're worth 1,000 of their opinions. Sleep well, Margot Sullivan. Tomorrow, we start our real story." She fell asleep clutching her phone, terrified and exhilarated, knowing that the hardest part was still ahead. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't facing it alone. The scandal broke on Friday morning with the subtlety of a nuclear bomb. Exclusive. Secret past of Blackwood's mystery woman. Arrest record, fraud allegations, and dark family secrets. Margot stared at her laptop screen, her coffee growing cold in her trembling hands. The article was everywhere. Every gossip site, every social media platform, every news outlet hungry for a story about fallen billionaires and scheming outsiders. The problem was that 90% of it was fabricated. Arrested for shoplifting at 16. Actually, a mistaken identity case that was dismissed. Fired from 3 previous jobs for theft. She'd quit 2 for better opportunities and been laid off from the 3rd during COVID. Father in prison for embezzlement. Her father had died when she was 8, never having committed any crime. But lies printed in bold font looked remarkably like truth. Her phone rang. Dash's name flashed on the screen. "Don't believe a word," he said immediately. "My lawyers are already drafting defamation suits. We'll destroy every outlet that printed this garbage." "Dash, stop." Margot's voice was eerily calm. "This is what she wanted. The more you fight, the longer the story lives. So we just let them lie about you. We let them see who I really am." She took a shaky breath. "Or I disappear and make this easier for everyone." "Don't you dare." His voice turned fierce. "Don't you dare let her win." But Vivienne had already won, hadn't she? The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict. Margot Sullivan was guilty of being poor, ambitious, wrong. The confrontation happened at the Blackwood Foundation Gala that evening, the same event Margot had supposedly been discussing with Dash the night they met. Dash had insisted she attend as his date. His mother had supported the decision. His father had threatened to disown him. Margot wore a simple black dress that Delphine had helped her find at a consignment shop, elegant but understated, refusing to play the role of Cinderella in borrowed designer gowns. The moment they entered the ballroom, the whispers started. Heads turned, conversations stopped, phones appeared, documenting every moment for social media dissection. "Smile," Dash murmured, his hand warm at the small of her back. "Show them you're not afraid." But she was afraid, terrified. This world wasn't hers, these people weren't her allies, and any moment she expected security to escort her out like the intruder she felt like. Then Vivienne made her entrance. She looked devastating in ice blue silk, her platinum hair swept up, her smile radiating wounded dignity. The perfect victim of a social climbing seductress. "Dashiell," she said, approaching them with a small entourage of supporters. "How brave of you to bring her here, after everything that's come out about her." Background. "Everything that you fabricated," Dash said coldly. I simply shared publicly available information. Vivian's eyes glittered with malice, though I was surprised to learn about the bankruptcy and the eviction notice and… Stop. Margot found her voice, stepping forward. You want to humiliate me? Fine. Yes, I've been poor. Yes, I've struggled. Yes, my family has nothing compared to yours. Her voice strengthened. But I've never lied, never cheated, and never deliberately hurt someone for sport. Can you say the same? The crowd had gathered now, phones recording, sensing blood in the water. Vivian's smile sharpened. Such passion. I can see why Dashiell is infatuated. Though infatuation fades, doesn't it? What happens when he realizes you can never truly belong in his world? Maybe his world needs to change. Eleanor Blackwood's voice cut through the tension. She materialized beside Margot, regal and formidable. Vivian, dear, since we're discussing public information, shall we discuss your 3 affairs? Or the trust fund you emptied to cover gambling debts? Or perhaps the prenuptial agreement you had forged? Vivian's face went white. You wouldn't dare… I already have. Eleanor smiled icily. My lawyers filed this afternoon. Fraud, defamation, extortion. The Ashford name will survive, I'm sure. But your position in this society… She paused. That's considerably more fragile. You're destroying me over a waitress? Vivian hissed. I'm correcting a mistake, Eleanor replied. I let you manipulate my family for too long. That ends tonight. Vivian's composure cracked. She turned to Margot, her beautiful face twisted with rage. You think you've won? You'll never be one of us. Every room you walk into, they'll whisper. Every mistake you make, they'll pounce. You'll spend your entire life proving you're worthy of standing beside him, and it still won't be enough. The words hit like physical blows, because part of Margot feared they were true. You're right, Margot said quietly. I'll never be one of you. Thank God for that. She turned to Dash, her heart breaking. I can't do this. I can't spend my life fighting battles in ballrooms, watching you sacrifice your relationships and reputation for me. Your mother's defending me now, but how long before she resents me too? How long before you resent me? Margot… Dash reached for her, but she stepped back. I love you. The words tumbled out, raw and honest. I've known you a week and I love you, which is insane and probably proves I'm exactly as foolish as everyone thinks. But I love you enough to let you go back to your world without me dragging you down. She walked away before he could respond, before she could see the devastation in his eyes, before the tears could fall. She made it to the lobby before Dash caught her arm. I quit, he said. What? I quit. Blackwood Industries, the foundation, the board positions, all of it. I called my assistant from the ballroom. His eyes were fierce, determined. You're right that my world is toxic. So I'm leaving it. We'll build something new, something real. Dash, you can't just… Watch me. He cupped her face in his hands. I don't need that world, Margot. I need you. I need someone who calls me on my privilege, who makes me laugh, who shows me what courage really looks like. Everything else? We'll figure it out together. You'll regret this, she whispered. The only thing I'd regret is letting you walk away. He pressed his forehead to hers. So I'm asking you again. Will you give us a real chance? Not the fairy tale, not the scandal, just us, messy and complicated and real. Margot thought about Vivian's words, about the whispers and battles ahead, about all the ways this could end badly. Then she thought about the feeling of his hand in hers, the sound of his laugh, the way he looked at her like she was his whole world. Yes, she breathed. Yes. His kiss tasted like hope and rebellion and the beginning of something impossible. Behind them, through the ballroom windows, Margot could see Eleanor raising a champagne glass in their direction, a salute or a blessing, or perhaps a warning that the hardest part was still ahead. But for now, standing in Dash's arms while Manhattan glittered around them, Margot let herself believe that love could be enough. 6 months later, Margot stood in front of a brick building in Brooklyn, keys in hand, hardly believing it was real. The sign above the door read, Sullivan and Blackwood Community Center. Opening soon. It's perfect, Dash said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Though I still think we should have put your name first. It's alphabetical, Margot laughed. And it's ours. That's what matters. The months since the gala had been a whirlwind. Dash had indeed quit Blackwood Industries, though his father had eventually reconciled after seeing his son's determination. Eleanor had become an unexpected ally and friend, using her influence to quietly shut down the remaining gossip about Margot. Vivienne had faced fraud charges. The Ashford family, desperate to save face, had settled quietly and sent her to their estate in the Hamptons for rest. The last Margot heard, Vivienne was engaged to a European count, another strategic match, another gilded cage. Margot felt pity more than triumph. They'd both been trapped in different ways by the same cruel system. Ready to see inside? Dash asked, his eyes bright with excitement. The community center was everything they'd dreamed. A commercial kitchen for cooking classes, computer labs for job training, childcare facilities. A cafe, managed by Delphine, that would serve the community and train young people in hospitality. In the main hall, Grandma Rose sat in a comfortable chair, directing volunteers with the authority of a 5-star general. Her new dentures gleamed when she smiled at Margot. "Looking good, baby girl," Rose called out. "Though when are you two going to make it official? I'm not getting any younger." Margot blushed, but Dash just grinned. "Actually, Mrs. Rose, I was hoping to discuss that with you." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and Margot's heart stopped. "Not here," she hissed. "Not in front of—" "Exactly here," Dash interrupted, dropping to one knee in the middle of their community center, surrounded by paint cans and volunteers and the life they'd built together. "Because this is real. This is us. No ballrooms, no champagne, no performing for society pages. Dash, Margot Sullivan, you've made me braver, better, more myself than I ever thought possible. You've shown me that love isn't about perfection or performance. It's about choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." His voice cracked slightly. "Will you marry me?" The ring was simple, a vintage sapphire that had belonged to his grandmother, who'd eloped with a jazz musician against her family's wishes and lived happily for 60 years. Margot looked at the man kneeling before her, the community they'd built, the future stretching out like a promise. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, laughing through tears. "Yes!" The volunteers erupted in cheers. Grandma Rose wiped her eyes. Delphine appeared with champagne she'd apparently been hiding for exactly this moment. As Dash slid the ring onto her finger, Margot thought about that night at the plaza, how terrified she'd been, how impossible all of this had seemed. "No regrets?" she asked softly, just for him. "Only that I didn't meet you sooner," he replied. The wedding happened 3 months later in the community center they'd built together. No plaza hotel, no designer gown, no society photographers. Just 200 people who actually mattered. Friends from the cafe, volunteers from the center, Eleanor in the front row crying openly. Even Dash's father, grudgingly admitting his son had found something more valuable than any merger. Margot wore a vintage dress from a Brooklyn boutique. Delphine was her maid of honor. Grandma Rose walked her down the aisle, strong and healthy and beaming. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, there was a moment of tense silence. Everyone knew Vivienne had been invited, a peace offering, a closure. She hadn't come. But she'd sent a card. "Congratulations, you won. Try to remember, I gave you the greatest gift. I set you free." V. Margot had cried reading it, understanding finally that Vivienne's cruelty had been born from her own cage, her own trapped life. "I do," Dash said, his voice steady and sure. "I do," Margot echoed, meaning it with every fiber of her being. Their kiss was met with thunderous applause, and as they walked back down the aisle hand in hand, Margot caught sight of their reflection in the window. Not a billionaire and a waitress, Not a fairy tale or a scandal, just two people who'd chosen love over fear. That night at the reception in their community center, Dash pulled her onto the makeshift dance floor. "So," he murmured against her hair, "how does it feel to be Mrs. Blackwood?" "Actually," Margot grinned, "I'm keeping Sullivan, and you're adding it too. We're both Sullivan Blackwood now." Dash threw his head back and laughed, that free, genuine sound she'd fallen in love with. "My father's going to have an aneurysm. He'll survive. He's tougher than he looks. That's what I love about you," Dash said softly. "You make everything seem possible." "It is possible," Margot replied. "We proved it." As they swayed together, surrounded by love and laughter and the beautiful mess of real life, Margot realized something profound. Fairy tales weren't about glass slippers or perfect princes or escaping your circumstances. They were about finding someone who saw you, truly saw you, and chose to build something real alongside you. The rest? The rest was just the beginning. 3 years later, Margot adjusted the baby carrier on her chest, smiling as tiny fingers wrapped around hers. Rose Eleanor Sullivan Blackwood, named for the two strongest women they knew, gurgled contentedly, completely unaware that she was attending the grand opening of her parents' 5th community center. "She's got your eyes," Delphine said, peering at the baby with the devotion of a proud aunt. "Poor kid doesn't stand a chance against Dash when she starts dating. She's 3 months old, Del. I'm planning ahead." The community center in the Bronx was their most ambitious project yet. 3 stories, a rooftop garden, partnerships with local schools and businesses. What had started as a single building in Brooklyn had grown into a network of centers across New York, each one employing locals, training young people, and proving that business could be both profitable and purposeful. Dash emerged from the crowd, his tie slightly loosened, hair charmingly disheveled from a day of setup work. He'd traded boardrooms for community meetings, and the change suited him. There were laugh lines around his eyes now, calluses on his hands from volunteer construction work, and a lightness in his step that hadn't existed 3 years ago. "Your grandmother is terrorizing the caterers," he reported, kissing Margot's temple and stroking their daughter's soft hair. "I think she made one of them cry." Tears of joy or fear? With Rose? Probably both. Margot laughed, watching Grandma Rose hold court near the refreshment table, healthy and vibrant and absolutely in her element. The dental work had been just the beginning. With proper health care and the joy of being surrounded by family and purpose, Rose had bloomed into the formidable woman she'd always been beneath the worry and pain. Eleanor Blackwood appeared beside them, immaculate as always, but with a warmth in her expression that would have shocked Manhattan society 3 years ago. She'd become a grandmother in every sense but legal, spoiling baby Rose outrageously and offering Margot the kind of maternal wisdom her own mother had never lived to provide. "The mayor's here," Eleanor announced, "and the Times is covering it. Also, darling, your father's trying to take credit for the whole thing in his interview." Dash groaned. "Of course he is." "Let him," Margot said generously. Robert Blackwood had eventually come around, especially after seeing the financial success of their model. He'd never fully understand his son's choices, but he'd learned to respect them. That was enough. "Oh, and this came for you." Eleanor handed Margot an envelope, expensive stationery with a European postmark. Inside was a birth announcement. Vivienne and Count Alessandro Rossi are pleased to announce the arrival of their daughter, Sophia. And beneath it, in Vivienne's precise handwriting, "She has your courage, I hope, and his kindness. Thank you for showing me there was another way. V." Margot felt tears prick her eyes. Redemption came in unexpected forms. "You okay?" Dash asked softly. "Yeah," she smiled. "Just thinking about how strange life is, how one night can change everything." "Best champagne accident of my life," he grinned. "You didn't actually spill anything." Details. As the sun set over the Bronx, Margot stood at the window of the new Center's cafe, watching the neighborhood come alive. Families arriving for the open house, teenagers checking out the computer labs, elderly residents settling into the community room. She thought about the terrified waitress she'd been 3 years ago, convinced she didn't belong in a world of crystal and diamonds. She'd been right. She hadn't belonged in that world, so she and Dash had built a new one. "Penny for your thoughts?" Dash wrapped his arms around her and their sleeping daughter. "Just thinking about that night at the plaza. How scared I was. How impossible everything seemed. And now? Now I know that impossible is just another word for hasn't happened yet." She turned in his arms, careful not to wake the baby. "We did it, Dash. We actually did it. We're still doing it," he corrected. "Every single day." Through the window, Margot could see Delphine teaching a young woman how to make espresso, Grandma Rose laughing with other seniors, volunteers painting murals on the walls. A community coming together, building something better. No glass slippers, no fairy godmother, no magic except the kind they'd made themselves through hard work, love, and the courage to imagine something different. "What are you thinking about?" Margot asked, noticing Dash's contemplative expression. "About that first night. How I almost let fear and obligation destroy the best thing that ever happened to me." He kissed her softly. "And how grateful I am that you were brave enough for both of us." "We took turns being brave," Margot corrected. "That's how partnerships work." Baby Rose stirred, making small sounds of waking. Margot lifted her from the carrier, and Dash immediately made ridiculous faces that had their daughter giggling. Eleanor appeared with a camera. "One for the archive?" They posed in front of the Sullivan and Blackwood Community Center sign. Dash with his arm around Margot, Baby Rose between them, all three smiling like they'd won the lottery. Which in every way that mattered, they had. As the camera flashed, Margot thought about fairy tales one last time. They weren't about princes or palaces or escaping your circumstances. They were about finding your people, building your purpose, choosing love even when it was hard, especially when it was hard, and waking up every day ready to choose it again. The rest was just details. And this was just the beginning. The end.